03, Melissa Fuente.
At this point in his presidency, there aren't many world leaders that President Donald Trump hasn't pissed off. However, by far the most dangerous is North Korean President Kim Jong-un. To be fair, calling the owner of the world's largest nuclear arsenal Rocket Man probably wasn't a good idea. But CNBC on March 30th, 2019 details. Despite their history of tension, the US and North Korea have recently started negotiating this year in talks about denuclearization, or getting North Korea to give up some of its nuclear weapons. However, most of these negotiations have ended with no deal, because understandably President Trump and President Kim Jong-un don't get along very well. However, the Washington Post on April 1st, 2019 reveals that one crucial ally that Trump can actually tap into is South Korea, specifically South Korean President Moon Jae-in. Because South Korea and North Korea have a history of conflict, but because South Korea and North Korea are so close together, the US can actually wield South Korea's power to aid in communications with President Kim Jong-un. And considering the aforementioned Washington Post details that if these two can closely ally with each other, it has the potential to heal conflicts on both fronts. It becomes imperative we ask today's question. How can South Korean President Moon Jae-in bolster positive relations between North Korea and the US? To which the answer is that President Moon Jae-in needs to closely ally with the United States because he can serve as a middleman in communications. And we can understand how this can be accomplished in three ways. By first, reducing military threats. Second, by providing a space for diplomacy. And finally, by easing economic tensions. Understandably, President Kim Jong-un doesn't want to give up all of his nuclear weapons just because President Trump asked him to, and especially considering that the United States has one of the strongest militaries in the world. However, the first way that President Moon Jae-in can ally with the United States and make for more positive relations is by helping to reduce the nuclear threat. The New York Times on March 23rd, 2019 explains that the past two summits that the US and North Korea have had in 2019 alone both ended with no deal because, understandably, President Kim Jong-un didn't feel like President Trump's requests were actually genuine, and he wasn't going to just throw away his nuclear arsenal because the United States asked. However, this is where South Korea can step in and actually serve as a communicative aid to the United States. Especially considering the New York Times back on February 10th, 2019 explains that the United States has a strong military presence in South Korea. However, the two leaders of the countries recently came to an agreement in which the United States would start to pull back its military from South Korea. This will prove to North Korea that the United States does not pose a significant military threat, showing that it has the flexibility to actually pull back. And in doing so, will make President Kim Jong-un more likely to trust President Trump and understand that he's no longer a threat, so North Korea doesn't have to be either. So the first way that President Moon Jae-in can ally with the United States is by helping to reduce the military threat. When it comes to two foreign leaders actually setting up a time and a place for negotiations, the land that those negotiations happen on have a huge factor in how those negotiations go. Understandably, in years past, President Trump and President Kim Jong-un don't want to meet on either US or North Korean territory because it gives either leader a home field advantage. However, the second way that President Moon Jae-in can closer ally with the United States and aid in positive relations is by providing a space for diplomacy. Politico on April 5th, 2019 explains that the last US-North Korean summit actually took place in Vietnam because that was one of the only spaces that was willing to welcome the two leaders. However, South Korea can aid in the next summit, considering that North Korea News on April 5th, 2019 explains that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo recently announced that a third summit is coming. With this in mind, President Moon Jae-in can stand up and say that South Korea is willing to host the two leaders, creating a space for both of them, and making sure that neither one has a home field advantage. Making the second way, as he can closer ally with the United States, is by providing a physical space for diplomacy. It's commonly known in the field of international relations that countries with strong economic ties will have better political negotiations as well, because it raises the stakes of both countries involved. So the final way that President Moon Jae-in can ally with the United States and aid in positive relations is by easing the economic tension that exists. The aforementioned New York Times explains that North Korea and the US ended up with a no deal in their previous summit because President Kim Jong-un wanted Trump to pull back on US sanctions in North Korea. Basically, sanctions making the economy in North Korea weaker because it's harder to get access to resources like oil. However, the New York Times on April 10, 2019 explains that President Trump is actually planning to visit South Korea within the next coming weeks for another summit talking about the whole conflict with North Korea. In this summit, President Moon Jae-in needs to prioritize the US sanctions that are being imposed on North Korea. Knowing this, President Moon Jae-in can actually wield some of its influence to push President Trump to pull back on these sanctions, making sure that President Kim Jong-un actually gets what he wants, and aiding in more positive relations for the next time that the US and North Korea actually do engage in a summit. Making the final way that President Moon Jae-in can closer ally with the United States and make for more positive relations is by easing the economic tension between the two. North Korea's nuclear arsenal poses a major military threat to the entire world, and it's not just limited to the United States and South Korea, which is why we had to ask today's question. How can South Korean President Moon Jae-in bolster positive relations between North Korea and the US? And we understood the answer is by closer allying with the United States, because President Moon Jae-in can serve as a middleman for communication. First, by reducing the military threat. Second, by providing a space for diplomacy. And finally, by easing economic tensions between the two. President Trump can mend his relationship with President Kim Jong-un, but it's only through President Moon Jae-in.